The ballroom of the Grand Crest Club in Chicago shimmered with the luxury typical of Midwestern elite gatherings. Janelle Carter adjusted her sapphire blue dress over her 5-month belly, feeling the baby shift as if unsettled by the pretense in the air. Her fingers instinctively rubbed her stomach, seeking reassurance from the judgmental eyes that trailed her across the room. The hum of conversation halted when Marcus Langston, her husband, entered. Tall, confident, and sharply dressed in a custom-tailored Italian suit. He radiated the entitlement of someone born into affluence. Janelle watched as he purposefully ignored her and moved straight to the bar, where Sierra Dawson was waiting. "You look stunning tonight," murmured Denise, her closest friend and confidant, handing her 2 glasses of sparkling water. "But your eyes tell another story. What's wrong?" Janelle inhaled deeply, steadying the tears threatening her carefully applied makeup. "I saw the messages on his phone," she admitted quietly. "It's not just whispers, Denise. Marcus and Sierra. It's real. It's been happening for months." Denise's brow furrowed, her gaze darting toward the pair at the bar. Sierra, barely in her 20s and wearing a bold red dress, threw her head back, laughing at something Marcus said. "That snake," Denise muttered. "You have to confront him, Janelle." "I've tried," Janelle replied, her voice heavy with pain. "He says it's business, that I'm imagining things because I'm pregnant." The moment shattered when Marcus, clearly intoxicated, staggered to the stage, surprising the room. No speech had been planned. Janelle's pulse quickened. "Ladies and gentlemen," his voice boomed, "tonight is special, not just because of the contracts we've closed, but because—" He paused theatrically, eyes locked on Sierra. "I finally understand what it means to be truly in love." A stunned silence blanketed the room. Janelle's knees wobbled as Marcus went on. "Some of you may be wondering about my marriage. Well, sometimes we make mistakes. We get swept up by duty, expectations." His words sliced like blades. Janelle caught the pitiful glances cast her way, the rising murmurs, the astonished looks. In her corner, Sierra wore a smug grin. Janelle, legs shaking, made her way to the stage. "Enough," she said, her voice quiet but commanding enough to hush the room. "You're not going to do this. Not with our son," Janelle said, her voice tight. Marcus let out a cruel laugh that Janelle knew she'd never forget. "Our son? Please, Janelle. Everyone knows this marriage was a mistake from the beginning. You were never meant for this life." The crack of the slap cut through the ballroom like a whip. Janelle hadn't even realized her hand had risen until she felt the sting on her palm. "You're right," she said, her voice trembling but fierce. "I don't belong in this world of lies and facades, and neither will my son." She turned to the stunned crowd, lifting her chin with pride. "I apologize for the scene, ladies and gentlemen," she said, "but sometimes it takes humiliation to find your real strength." As she stepped down from the stage, Denise rushed to her side. Together, they walked toward the exit. Janelle felt her baby move again. This time, it felt like approval. Silent tears rolled down her cheeks, but her decision was firm. That night would be the last time Marcus Langston made her feel small. In the back seat of the cab, as Chicago's lights blurred past the window, Janelle whispered a vow to the child growing inside her. "We're starting over, my love. Just you and me. And I swear, you'll grow up knowing only love and respect." 5 years passed in a blur, like flipping through pages too quickly. Now 26, Janelle stood at the window of her downtown office overlooking West Madison Street, watching the sunset cast golden light over the city. Her digital marketing agency, born out of necessity and grit, now filled an entire floor of the building. "Mommy," a bright voice called out, breaking her thoughts. Her 5-year-old Julian came running into the room, his dark curls bouncing and his face glowing with excitement. "Look what I made at school today." Janelle crouched down as Julian thrust a crayon drawing into her hands, 2 stick figures surrounded by red and purple hearts. One tall, one small. "It's us, Mommy," Julian explained, pointing to each figure. "The teacher said to draw our family." Janelle's heart clenched. It wasn't the first time she'd noticed Julian's drawings only included the 2 of them. He never directly asked about his father, but Janelle saw it in the way he studied other dads at school pickup, or stared just a little longer at families in the park. "It's beautiful, sweetheart," she said, pulling him into a hug. "Ready to head home? We could make that cheesy pasta you love." Julian's eyes lit up even brighter. All the cheese in the world? All the cheese in the world, Janelle promised with a grin as she gathered her things. Before they could leave, her executive assistant and close friend Riley appeared at the doorway. "Janelle, before you go, this came for you," Riley said, handing over a thick envelope embossed with the letterhead of one of Chicago's most prestigious law firms. Janelle felt a chill crawl down her spine. She opened the envelope with steady hands. Her fears were confirmed. Legal documents concerning Marcus. Apparently, he was in deep financial trouble and was requesting a review of their support agreement. "Riley, can you take Julian down to the car? I need to make a quick call," Janelle asked, trying to keep her voice composed. Once alone, she dialed Denise, who was not only her friend, but now also her lawyer. "Did you see it?" Denise asked without any pleasantries. "I just opened it. What's going on?" Janelle asked. "His company's shares have tanked. Word is, Sierra blew through a fortune, and he made some awful investment calls. Marcus is nearly broke." Janelle closed her eyes, the image of the arrogant man who had shamed her flashing back. For a moment, her thoughts wandered further, to the nights she had spent on a futon in a cramped apartment, Julian asleep beside her, the radiator barely working, her fingers raw from typing into the early morning hours, trying to build something of her own. Her parents hadn't spoken to her since she left Marcus. "You're throwing your life away," her mother had said. And when Janelle had walked out anyway, the silence had been permanent. "And now he wants what? To change the agreement?" "Yes," Denise replied. "But Janelle, there's more. He wants to meet Julian." The world seemed to shift beneath her. For 5 years, Marcus had shown zero interest in their son. He had limited his involvement to monthly deposits, nothing more. "Why now?" Janelle murmured, more to herself than to Denise. "People change when they hit bottom," Denise said gently. "Or maybe they realize what actually matters." Janelle moved to the window, watching Riley and Julian playing near the car. Her son laughed freely, unaware of the storm building. "I'll think about it," she said quietly, "but I need to be sure this isn't just another one of his performances." After hanging up, Janelle joined Julian downstairs. On the drive home, he chatted about his school day. But her thoughts wandered. Back to that awful night at the Grand Crest Club. The sting of it remained. Still, something in her stirred. Maybe, just maybe, Julian deserved the chance to meet his father. Not for reconciliation, but to know where he came from. At home, while they prepared their promised pasta, Julian accidentally sent a cascade of grated cheese across the counter. He laughed at the mess. Janelle smiled, watching him. So innocent, so full of joy. She had built a haven for him, shielding him from pain. But was it right to keep Marcus away forever? "Mom, why are you crying?" Julian asked, catching a single tear on her cheek. "It's just the cheese and love," she fibbed, wiping her face. "Sometimes they make your eyes water." That night, after tucking Julian into bed, Janelle sat out on the balcony, city lights flickering in the distance. The envelope from the law firm rested heavily in her lap. Inside wasn't just legal paperwork. It was the chance for change, for forgiveness, for something new. But also the possibility of pain. Again. The night air tousled her hair as she sat quietly, weighing the future. She had made up her mind. For Julian, she would face her fears. She would give Marcus the opportunity to show he had changed. But this time, it would be entirely on her terms. The executive suite atop the Grant building no longer gleamed like it once did. Marcus Langston stood at the large window, staring out at the city he used to believe he ruled. Every breath heavy with the burden of past mistakes. The walls, once covered with fine art, now revealed faint rectangular outlines where the paintings had once hung. Mr. Langston, the voice of his new assistant, a far cry from the high-salaried aide he could no longer afford, buzzed through the intercom. "Your ex-wife is here." Marcus straightened his tie, a habit ingrained from better days. "Send her in." When Janelle entered, Marcus felt the air leave the room. She was even more striking than he remembered, radiating a calm confidence he had never recognized during their marriage. Her navy blue suit was crisp, her posture straight. She was no longer the woman he had once belittled. "Marcus," she said coolly, ignoring the chair he motioned toward. "Thank you for coming," he said, his voice raspier than intended. "I assume you got the paperwork." "I did," she replied, placing the folder neatly on his desk. But before we go into any agreement, I need to understand what your real intentions are with Julian. The mention of his son struck Marcus hard. On the desk lay a photograph he had obtained through private investigators. Julian beaming on a swing in the park. "I've made horrible choices, Janelle," Marcus began, running a hand through his now salt and pepper hair. "Sierra, I'm not here to talk about Sierra," Janelle interrupted. "I want to know why, after 5 years, you suddenly want to meet your son." Marcus turned to the window. The Chicago skyline outside loomed under heavy, stormy clouds. "When you have everything, Janelle, it's easy to forget what matters. Sierra burned through millions, on jewelry, vacations, indulgences, and I let her. My ego thrived off having a gorgeous woman by my side." He paused, turning to face her. "But when the money runs out, people show you who they really are. She left me." 3 months ago, Marcus continued, "she left, took what was left of my fortune with her. And now, you want to reconnect with your son because you're broke?" Janelle's voice cut through the room, layered with contempt and disbelief. "No," Marcus said, his voice cracking. "I want to meet him because I've finally realized I wasted years chasing things that meant nothing. Every night, I close my eyes and see his face, that ultrasound image. It's the last real picture I have of him." Janelle didn't respond immediately. She studied the man before her, the man who once oozed arrogance. Time had not been gentle. His face was creased, and the confidence in his eyes had faded into something far more human: regret. "Julian is a sensitive boy," she said at last. "He only ever draws the two of us when he's asked to picture our family. He's never said anything about you directly, but I can see it. The way he watches other dads at school, the way he lingers near full families at the park." She paused. "If I let you into his life, I need to know you won't hurt him." "I'll do anything," Marcus said quickly. "Whatever conditions you have, I'll meet them." "My terms are simple," Janelle replied, crossing her arms. "First, you go to therapy, regularly. I want monthly reports. Second, your visits with Julian will be supervised, at least in the beginning. And third, the moment I see even the slightest risk to his emotional well-being, it ends." Marcus nodded, swallowing hard. "And as for support," she continued, "we're keeping the same agreement. I know you're in trouble, but Julian shouldn't suffer for it. Sell your luxury cars, let go of the condo on Lakeshore Drive, prove that your priorities have changed." A single tear traced Marcus's cheek, the first she'd ever seen from him. "You've become an incredible woman, Janelle," he said, voice quiet. "I'm not doing this for you, Marcus," she said, turning toward the door. "I'm doing it for our son. He deserves to know his father, even if it took that father 5 years to care." Just before she left, she turned back. "Monday, 4 o'clock, the park by my house. Don't be late." As the door closed behind her, Marcus sank into his chair, eyes fixed on the photo of Julian, the little boy he'd never met. Outside, rain began to fall against the windows of the Grant building. Somewhere out in the city, his son was laughing, growing up, and for the first time in 5 years, he had a chance to be part of that life. That Monday, Washington Park was glowing with autumn's golden colors. Janelle arrived 20 minutes early and watched Julian run through the crunchy leaves, his bright blue scarf fluttering like a flag. She hadn't told him who they were meeting, not yet. She wasn't sure how he'd react, or how Marcus would show up. "Mom, look at all the leaves," Julian shouted, tossing a handful into the air and laughing as they showered down on his head. Janelle checked her watch anxiously, 3:55 p.m. Her pulse quickened when she saw Marcus approaching. He wore jeans and a simple gray sweater, a far cry from his usual designer suits. In his hands, he carried a package. "You came," Janelle murmured, more to herself than to him. "5 minutes early," Marcus said, his voice slightly unsteady. His eyes were fixed on Julian, who continued playing, unaware of the tension thickening the air. Janelle exhaled slowly. "Julian," she called gently. He ran toward her, stopping short when he noticed the man standing nearby. "Sweetheart," she said softly, "there's someone who really wants to meet you." Julian stepped forward cautiously, partially hiding behind his mother. His curious eyes scanned Marcus closely. "Hi, Julian," Marcus said, kneeling to be at eye level with his son. I'm your father." The silence that followed stretched long. Julian looked to Janelle, and she gave him a small, reassuring nod. "You left," Julian finally said, his voice quiet but resolute. Why? The question struck Marcus like lightning. Janelle noticed his hands shaking as he clutched the package tighter. I made a huge mistake, Marcus said, voice cracking. I was a foolish man who didn't understand what really mattered. But I'm here now. If you'll let me try to be your dad. Julian stood still, taking in the words, his serious face so much like Janelle's that Marcus's chest tightened. I brought you something, Marcus added, offering the package. It's not much. Julian glanced at his mother again. She nodded and he took the gift. His eyes lit up as he opened it. A high-end set of building blocks. Your mom told me you love building things, Marcus explained. I thought maybe we could build something together, if you want. A small smile appeared on Julian's face. Can we make a castle? We can make the biggest castle this park has ever seen, Marcus said, relief washing over him. For the next hour, Janelle sat watching them on a nearby bench. Julian, initially hesitant, gradually warmed up, chatting excitedly about towers and bridges, while Marcus listened closely to every detail. Mom, come see, Julian called out at one point. Dad showed me how to make a real working drawbridge. The word dad made Marcus freeze for a moment. His eyes met Janelle's. She saw in them a mix of gratitude and deep remorse. As the sun began to dip behind the trees, Janelle said gently, Time to go. Julian whined in protest but calmed when Marcus promised to bring more building pieces next time, if his mom allowed it. Can I see him again? Marcus asked quietly as Julian packed up the blocks. Next week, same time, Janelle replied. But Marcus, don't make promises you can't keep. He's already starting to attach. I know. Marcus nodded solemnly. I won't let him down. Not this time. Before they left, Julian surprised everyone by giving Marcus a quick hug. Thanks for the present, Dad. On the ride home, Julian chattered non-stop about the castles and bridges he planned to build at their next meetup. Janelle listened, her heart caught between the joy of seeing her son so animated and the anxiety of what the future might bring. That night, after tucking Julian into bed, she discovered an envelope Marcus had quietly slipped into her handbag. Inside was a letter and a receipt from his first therapy session. I'm trying, the letter read, not for the money, not for redemption, but for the chance to be the father Julian deserves. Thank you for today, Janelle. Thank you for not letting my mistakes decide our son's future. Janelle placed the letter in her drawer beside one of Julian's recent crayon drawings from school. Maybe tomorrow he'd draw his family a little differently. Charlotte Andrews' office sat atop a sleek penthouse in the West Loop, with wide windows overlooking the Chicago River. Janelle settled into the familiar leather chair while her friend and attorney flipped through Marcus's latest financial statements on her tablet. He sold the condo on Lakeshore Drive, Charlotte commented, scrolling. And 2 of the 3 luxury cars. Looks like he's serious about meeting your terms. Janelle nodded, her fingers circling her teacup slowly. Julian talks about him every day, she said softly. Last night, he asked if his dad could come to his school Christmas play. And will you let him? Charlotte asked. Before Janelle could reply, the office door burst open and Sierra Dawson stormed in like a gust of wind, her high heels clacking sharply across the marble. So it's true, she snapped, her eyes burning with rage. You're letting Marcus get near the boy? Charlotte immediately stood. This is a private meeting. I'll call security. No need, Janelle said calmly. Let's hear what she has to say. Sierra tossed a glossy gossip magazine onto the table. On the cover was a picture of Marcus and Julian at the park, building blocks together. The sensational headline read, Langston heir rebuilds family after financial scandal. You actually think he's changed? Sierra sneered. Marcus is a manipulator. He's using that kid to clean up his public image, to get investors back on his side. Janelle studied her former rival. Sierra was still striking, but something had shifted in her, a thin, desperate glimmer behind her polished look. Why do you care, Sierra? Janelle asked softly. You left him. You took a fortune with you. What happened to all that money? A flush crept up Sierra's neck. That's none of your business. Actually, it is, Charlotte interjected, lifting a folder. Some of the money you spent came from Julian's educational fund. Sierra's face visibly paled. I didn't know. Marcus never told me. Of course not, Janelle said, her voice quiet but cutting. He was too busy trying to dazzle you with gifts and luxury vacations. The room went silent. Outside, the clouds darkened, mirroring the weight inside the office. "He cried for you," Sierra said suddenly. "When I realized the money was gone and I walked out, he broke down. I'd never seen him cry before. Not once. But for you," she swallowed. "For you and the boy, he cries even now." Janelle's heart clenched at the words. "That doesn't undo what he did." "No," Sierra agreed, her polished composure beginning to crack. "But maybe he has changed. I destroyed him, Janelle, completely. And the only thing he mourns is losing you and Julian." Tears spilled down Sierra's flawless cheeks. "I came to warn you, to tell you he might be scheming something, but the truth is, I'm jealous. Because after everything, you still have something real, something money can't buy." Charlotte silently handed her a tissue, which Sierra accepted with trembling fingers. "What will you do now?" Janelle asked. "Go back to Ohio," Sierra replied, offering a wistful smile. "My mom always said Chicago would chew me up. I guess she was right." When Sierra left, only the echo of her heels and her perfume lingered. Charlotte turned to Janelle. "Well?" "That was unexpected." Janelle picked up the magazine and stared at the image of Marcus and Julian in the park. Something in Marcus's expression struck her. Something raw and genuine. A softness she'd never seen during their marriage. "You know what's ironic?" Janelle said, tracing the photo with her finger. "Marcus had to lose everything just to find something real." Her phone buzzed with a message, a photo of tickets to the Chicago Theater's holiday show. "Julian mentioned he's never seen the Nutcracker," the message read. "Can we take him next weekend? I'll follow all your rules." Janelle smiled, remembering the way Julian's eyes lit up whenever he spoke about his dad. Maybe some people really did need to hit bottom to discover who they truly were. "I'll let him go to the Christmas performance," she decided aloud. "Julian deserves to make happy memories with his father, and Marcus, maybe he deserves the chance to make them." Snowflakes twirled through the December sky, blanketing Chicago in postcard beauty. Inside Riverside Elementary School's auditorium, Janelle adjusted the tiny bow tie on Julian's tux, while other mothers fussed over their own little performers. "Is he here yet, Mommy?" Julian asked for the third time in 5 minutes, his eyes glued to the auditorium door. "Not yet, love," Janelle replied softly, glancing at her phone. No messages from Marcus. The school Christmas performance was a big deal. Julian had landed the lead, a little elf helping Santa rediscover the true meaning of the holiday. For weeks, he had rehearsed non-stop, not just to impress the audience, but especially his father. 5 minutes to start, called out Mrs. Henderson, the music teacher, clapping her hands to round up the children. Janelle's heart squeezed at the sight of Julian's nervous face. "Sweetheart, sometimes traffic." "He promised, Mommy," Julian cut in, his voice small but hopeful. "He said he'd never break a promise again." Just then, the back door creaked open and Marcus rushed inside, brushing snow off his coat. His eyes scanned the crowd until they landed on Julian, and his face broke into a warm, sincere smile. "Sorry I'm late, champ," he said as he reached them. "The subway was delayed with the snow, but I wasn't going to miss this. No way." "Subway?" Janelle couldn't hide her surprise. The Marcus she used to know wouldn't have considered public transport. "I sold my last car yesterday," he said, smoothing out a small package in his hand. "But I brought you something, for luck." Julian opened it carefully. Inside was a tiny gold pin in the shape of a star. "It was my father's," Marcus explained, pinning it on Julian's tux. "He wore it for every important speech or performance. Now it's yours." Janelle watched the exchange, feeling both hopeful and guarded. Marcus had been showing up consistently, attending every scheduled visit, respecting boundaries. But years of disappointment had taught her to keep her guard up. "All actors to their places," Mrs. Henderson called out. "Break a leg, son," Marcus grinned, using the theatrical phrase Julian had proudly taught him. While the kids lined up backstage, Janelle and Marcus headed to their seats, separate ones as agreed. The musical began, and Julian lit up the stage. His clear, sweet voice carried through the auditorium, his lines spoken with the poise of someone much older. From her seat, Janelle saw Marcus leaning forward, completely absorbed, his eyes glowing with pride. During the intermission, Janelle overheard a nearby conversation. A man was speaking to Marcus. "Your son is very talented." "Yeah, he's amazing," Marcus replied. "I missed 5 years of his life, 5 Christmases, 5 birthdays. Now every moment feels like a gift. Every smile, every little win. I don't deserve it, but I'm grateful for all of it. Janelle felt her guard slipping, even though she didn't want it to. There was something raw and honest in Marcus's voice she had never heard before. After the show, Julian came running into his father's arms, still dressed in his elf costume. "Did you see me, Dad? Did you see my solo?" "I saw every second of it, champ," Marcus said, hugging him close. "You are the best leprechaun this stage has ever seen." "Can we get hot chocolate?" Julian asked, his eyes bouncing between his parents. "Please, Mom?" Janelle hesitated. It wasn't part of the plan, but the sparkle in her son's eyes was impossible to resist. "All right," she said, "but just a little." "It's late." In the small school cafeteria, as Julian excitedly recounted the backstage happenings, Janelle watched Marcus gently wipe a chocolate mustache from his son's upper lip. He listened intently, his eyes softening with every word, every giggle. "You know," Julian said suddenly, "some of my friends have 2 Christmases, one at Mom's and one at Dad's." The air thickened with silence. Janelle and Marcus exchanged a glance. "Julian," Janelle said gently, "sometimes things are a little more complicated." "But I've been good," he insisted, his eyes wide and pleading. "And Dad's been nice too, hasn't he?" Marcus swallowed. "Your mom's right. Some things just take time." "But you promised not to leave," Julian whispered, voice trembling. "And I won't," Marcus said with quiet conviction. "Even if we can't have 2 Christmases yet, I promise I'll be here when you need me." That night, after putting Julian to bed, Janelle found Marcus still standing outside the building, watching snow fall. "He really believes in you," she said softly. "I know," Marcus replied, his voice heavy with emotion. "And this time, Janelle, I'm not letting him down. Not him, not you." Dr. Rebecca Martinez's office was warm and serene, its soft-colored walls and wide view of snow-covered Lincoln Park creating a peaceful space. Marcus sat on the brown leather couch while Dr. Martinez skimmed her session notes. "You seem tense today," she observed, her sharp eyes picking up on the tightness in his posture. "I got a job offer," Marcus began, nervously tugging at the sleeve of his sweater. "A company in Dubai. They want me to overhaul their financial structure. Big paycheck. And that upsets you because it means being gone for 3 months, away from Chicago, away from Julian." He stood and walked to the window. "Before I wouldn't have blinked. I'd be on a plane, chasing the money. But now your priorities have shifted," the therapist said gently. "Julian has a piano recital next month," Marcus added. "He only started 2 months ago, but he's all in. He plays Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. Seriously, his tongue sticks out at the side of his mouth." He smiled unintentionally. "Just like Janelle when she's focused." Dr. Martinez jotted down a few notes. "You talked to Janelle about the offer?" Dr. Martinez asked gently. "Not yet," Marcus admitted. "I'm afraid of how she'll react. I've worked so hard to earn her trust these past few months. And Julian." He paused, swallowing. "He finally calls me Dad without hesitation." Just then his phone vibrated. A message from Janelle, a photo of Julian proudly holding up a math test marked with an A+. "He made me send it," the message read. "You know, Marcus," Dr. Martinez said softly, "sometimes the toughest decisions aren't dramatic. They're the small ones, the ones that force us to redefine what success means." "And this job in Dubai," she added. "Financial redemption," Marcus answered quickly. "A chance to prove I still matter, that I'm not a failure." "What if you're already proving it? Just not in dollars?" Her question hung in the silence. Another message came in, a video of Julian practicing the piano, his small fingers carefully moving across the keys. "When I was at the top," Marcus said, his voice unsteady, "I had everything money could buy, but I never got messages like this. No one waiting to show me what they accomplished." "And how does that make you feel?" the therapist asked. "Rich," Marcus said, surprised by the word. "Richer than I've ever felt, even with a loaded bank account." After the session, Marcus headed to the Field Museum, where he had arranged to meet Janelle and Julian for the dinosaur exhibit. On the way, he passed by his old brokerage, the tower where he had once spent 12-hour days trading millions. Julian spotted him first, running toward him with infectious excitement. "Dad, you won't believe it. There's a huge T-Rex inside." Janelle walked up more slowly, noting something different in Marcus's expression. "Everything okay?" she asked. "I need to talk to you," he replied. "But first, how about we go meet this T-Rex?" For the next 2 hours, Marcus watched his son marvel at the displays, firing off questions about each extinct species. Janelle occasionally translated the plaque descriptions into words Julian could understand, her endless patience reminding Marcus why he had once fallen in love with her. At the museum cafe, while Julian happily sipped his chocolate milkshake, Marcus finally gathered the nerve to speak. "I'm not taking the job in Dubai," he said. Janelle looked up, surprised. "5 years ago, I chose money and image over my family. I won't make the same mistake twice." "Marcus," Janelle said, her voice softening, "you don't have to turn down a great job just to prove your commitment." "I'm not proving anything to anyone but myself," he replied, watching Julian draw dinosaurs on a napkin. "For the first time in my life, I finally understand what really matters." "And what's that?" Janelle asked, though she already knew the answer. "This," he said, gesturing at the moment around them. "Chocolate milkshakes, dinosaur sketches, beginner piano recitals. All the little things I used to overlook." Julian held up his napkin proudly, showing 3 stick figures beside a grinning T-Rex. "Look, it's us." Janelle and Marcus exchanged a glance full of quiet understanding. In recent weeks, Julian's drawings had started including 3 people, not just 2. "It's beautiful, son," Marcus smiled, carefully folding the napkin and tucking it into his wallet. "Way better than any deal in Dubai." Spring arrived in Chicago, bringing more than just blooming flowers. There were subtle shifts in the rhythm of life between Janelle, Marcus, and Julian. Janelle's office buzzed with Friday afternoon energy when her assistant stepped in. "Charlotte's here," Rose said, her expression concerned. "She looks upset." Janelle barely had time to rise before her friend and attorney entered the room, carrying a thick briefcase and wearing a serious expression. "We need to talk," Charlotte said, closing the door behind her. "It's about Marcus." Janelle's heart quickened. "What happened?" Charlotte spread several documents on the table. "Remember that Middle Eastern investor who showed interest in your company? I found out he has ties to Marcus." "What do you mean?" "When Marcus declined the Dubai offer, he redirected some potential investors toward up-and-coming firms in Chicago," Charlotte explained, "including yours." Janelle sank into her chair. "Are you saying those contracts we signed last month were influenced by Marcus?" Charlotte nodded. "He didn't take a cent in commission. He passed on it, just to make sure they chose your company." A swirl of emotion crashed through Janelle. Confusion, disbelief, gratitude all tangled up inside her. "Why would he do that?" she murmured. "Maybe you should ask him," Charlotte replied gently. "He's downstairs at the cafe on the corner, and he asked me to give you these documents." Janelle found Marcus exactly where Charlotte had said, sitting alone at a small table in the back, watching the street through the window. He looked leaner, but calmer than he had in his high-flying days. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked, sitting across from him without preamble. Marcus didn't pretend to be confused. "Because you would have said no. Because your pride, one of the things I respect most about you, wouldn't let you take anything from me. You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did," Marcus finally said, looking her in the eye. "Not for money or recognition, but because." He hesitated, carefully choosing his words. "Because you've built something incredible, Janelle, all on your own. After everything I ruined, you deserve for the world to see your talent." "But giving up your commission." "It was the easiest decision I've ever made," he interrupted softly. "Do you know what Julian said to me yesterday during his piano practice?" Marcus asked. Janelle shook her head, still trying to take in everything. "He said you're his superhero. That even when you're exhausted after work, you always make time to read him bedtime stories, help with homework, and make pancakes on Sunday mornings." Marcus smiled wistfully. "And he's right. You are extraordinary, Janelle. You always have been. I was just too busy chasing paychecks to realize it." A heavy silence settled between them, filled only by the gentle hum of the cafe and the faint sound of city traffic. "Julian has a piano performance next week," Janelle said at last. "He wants it to be a surprise for you." "I know," Marcus replied softly. "He's been practicing a lot." "He also asked." Janelle hesitated, fidgeting with her napkin. "He asked if we could all have dinner afterward, as a family." Marcus's eyes widened slightly. "And what did you say?" "I told him I'd think about it," she admitted. "But now, after finding out what you did." "Janelle," Marcus interrupted gently. I didn't do any of this expecting something in return. Every moment I've had with Julian, every smile, every hug, it's already more than I deserve. I'm not trying to buy my way back in. I know, she whispered. That's why, for the first time in 5 years, I'm actually considering that maybe we could try to be a family again. Not like before, but something new. Janelle's phone buzzed. A message from Julian's school. Attached was a photo of him beaming next to his science project, a tiny handcrafted solar system. He's got your eyes, Marcus said, looking at the photo from across the table. But your smile, Janelle added with a small grin. And your stubbornness. Poor kid, Marcus chuckled. Didn't stand a chance. As they stepped out of the cafe, Chicago's spring was in full bloom, with petals from flowering trees swirling through the air. Janelle watched Marcus walk toward the L train entrance, his posture tall despite the suit, no longer designer, but worn with quiet pride. Marcus, she called impulsively. He turned. Dinner after the recital? 7 okay with you? The smile that lit up his face said everything. The recital hall of the Chicago Academy of Music glowed under warm lights as eager parents filled the rows of cushioned chairs. Janelle was backstage, straightening the lapels of Julian's little suit one last time, her heart pounding almost as fast as her son's. You nervous, sweetheart? She asked, smoothing a wild curl that kept falling into his eyes. A little, Julian admitted, tapping out invisible piano notes in the air, a habit he'd picked up during the past few intense weeks of practice. But Dad says being nervous means you care. Janelle smiled, remembering the extra lessons Marcus had arranged. Sitting beside Julian for hours, even though he knew nothing about music, just to cheer him on. Ladies and gentlemen, came the amplified voice of the piano teacher, Madame Laurent. Welcome to our young musicians' spring recital. The performances began, each student stepping onto the stage with varying degrees of confidence and talent. Julian would be the last to play. A choice made by his teacher, who recognized his natural musicality. Marcus arrived quietly during the third performance, carrying a bouquet of sunflowers, Julian's favorite. Janelle noticed him and took in how different he was from the man she'd once known. There was a gentleness in his movements now, a humility in his expression that made him nearly unrecognizable. And now, announced Madame Laurent, our final performer of the evening, Julian Bennett Montgomery, playing Beethoven's Für Elise. A murmur of surprise rippled through the audience. The piece was significantly more difficult than the ones played earlier. Janelle held her breath as Julian took the stage, adjusted the piano bench just like he had practiced, and placed his fingers on the keys. The first notes flowed out with remarkable grace for someone so young. Janelle could see the intense concentration in his eyes, the same look Marcus had once described during therapy. Tongue poking slightly out as he focused. In the third row, Marcus leaned forward, completely entranced. His eyes sparkled with a quiet pride Janelle knew well, the same look she saw in her own reflection every time she thought of their son. Julian reached the most difficult section of the composition, where the notes tumbled faster and more intricately. For a moment, his hands paused and Janelle's breath caught in her chest. Then something beautiful happened. Julian looked up, locked eyes with his parents, and smiled. A flicker of confidence surged through him and he picked the melody back up, his small hands dancing fluidly across the keys as if the moment had been waiting just for him. As the final note rang out, the recital hall went completely silent, then exploded into applause. Julian stood, bowed just as Madame Laurent had shown him, and, breaking every rule of decorum, sprinted straight into his parents' arms. You did it, sweetheart, Janelle exclaimed, holding him close. That was incredible. Champ, Marcus added, handing over the sunflowers. Beethoven would have been proud. Can we go to dinner now? Julian asked, his eyes gleaming with excitement. I'm starving. At the cozy Italian restaurant they had picked, Julian sat between his parents, still glowing from the performance. The waiter handed him a kid's menu, but Julian insisted on the adult one, carefully sounding out each Italian word. Spaghetti alla carbonara, he said proudly. Just like Dad taught me. Janelle raised an eyebrow at Marcus, who shrugged with a modest smile. We've been learning Italian during our Thursday hangouts. Between piano and Italian, he'll be more cultured than either of us soon. Janelle laughed. I believe it. "See," Julian replied with a cheeky grin, making them both chuckle. During dinner, the conversation flowed with surprising ease. Julian shared stories from school, Marcus recalled tales from his childhood summers in Italy, and Janelle chimed in with her own thoughts and memories. "Can I order dessert?" Julian asked after cleaning his plate thoroughly. "Of course you can, champ. You earned it," Marcus replied, but his eyes flicked to Janelle, silently asking permission. She nodded with a smile. While Julian examined the dessert menu with the same focus he gave to Beethoven, Janelle felt something shift between her and Marcus. It wasn't love, not in the way it had once been, but something grounded, mutual, respectful. A fragile understanding born from what they'd overcome. "Thank you," Marcus said quietly, just for her, "for letting me be part of this." Janelle looked at her son, a perfect blend of them both, and responded just as softly, "Thank you for becoming someone who deserves it." Summer hit Chicago with a relentless heat wave, turning sidewalks into steaming corridors. Inside Dr. Martinez's cool office, Janelle settled into the familiar leather sofa, only this time it was for her own session, not Marcus's. "It feels strange being here," Janelle admitted, glancing at the same view of Lincoln Park Marcus often described. "I've always been the strong one, the one who didn't need help." "Strength doesn't mean the absence of vulnerability," the therapist said gently. "What brought you in today?" Janelle took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts. "Julian asked me yesterday if his dad could sleep over sometime. He said his friend Thomas has 2 bedrooms, one at his mom's and one at his dad's, but that he'd rather we all live together." "And how did that make you feel?" Dr. Martinez asked. "Terrified," Janelle admitted with a half laugh. "And also, not as terrified as I expected to be." "It's confusing," Janelle said. Dr. Martinez made a few notes before speaking again. "Are you afraid of trusting Marcus again?" "I'm afraid I already am," Janelle replied, surprised by her own honesty. "Over the last few months he's been different, not just with Julian but with me too. Respectful, present, humble even. And that scares you." "It scares me because—" Janelle paused as unexpected tears filled her eyes. "Because it's easier to hate the man he was than admit I still love the man he's become." The silence that followed was broken only by the soft hum of the city outside. Dr. Martinez waited patiently as Janelle dabbed her eyes with a tissue. "Yesterday," Janelle continued, "Julian had a school choir performance. Marcus got there early, helped set up chairs, chatted with the other parents. Nothing remarkable, except," she added with a bittersweet smile, "the Marcus I used to know would have never done that. He would have thought it beneath him." "People can change, Janelle." "I know, it's just that." She hesitated. "What if I'm just seeing what I want to see? What if Julian is too?" Dr. Martinez leaned forward slightly. "Tell me what you see." "I see a man who takes the train to save for his son's piano lessons, who sits on the living room floor to play dinosaurs, even when he's wearing his only good suit, who looks at Julian like he's the 8th wonder of the world." Janelle paused. "And sometimes he looks at me the same way." "And how does that make you feel?" "Scared. Hopeful. Angry that I feel hopeful." Janelle laughed softly, nervously. "All of it, at the same time." "Janelle," the therapist said gently, "have you considered that the real fear might not be in trusting Marcus, but in trusting yourself?" The question hit like lightning. "What do you mean?" "You built strong walls after your divorce. They protected you, helped you raise Julian alone, helped you grow your business. But walls can also block us from seeing real, lasting change." Just then, Janelle's phone vibrated. A message from Marcus. It was a photo of Julian, sound asleep on the sofa in his office, surrounded by Italian books and sheet music. The message read, "He insisted on stopping by after school, said he needed to practice with the best Italian teacher in the world. Ended up falling asleep studying Mozart." Janelle felt a slow warmth rise in her chest as she noticed Marcus had covered Julian with his own blazer. "You know what's most ironic?" she murmured, showing the photo to Dr. Martinez. "Marcus has lost everything. Money, status, power. But for the first time since I've known him, he looks truly rich." "And you?" the therapist asked gently. "How do you feel about this new wealth?" Dr. Martinez asked. Janelle searched for the right words. "Like maybe it's time to lower some of these walls. Not all of them, and not all at once. But just enough to let a little more light in." When the session ended, Janelle stepped into the lobby and found Marcus and Julian waiting. Her son was still sleepy, tucked into his father's arms. "He didn't want to leave without saying goodbye to you," Marcus explained softly. Janelle looked at them, her little miracle and the man who was learning slowly to become worthy of that miracle. Maybe Dr. Martinez was right. Maybe it was time not just to trust Marcus, but to trust her own ability to recognize real change. "How about pizza for dinner?" she asked. "At our place." Marcus's smile was careful, hopeful, genuine. "That would be perfect." Janelle's Brooklyn apartment was filled with the aroma of homemade tomato sauce and fresh basil. In the kitchen, Julian sat on a stool, spreading shredded cheese over the pizza dough he had helped roll out, while Marcus carefully sliced cherry tomatoes. "More cheese, Dad?" Julian asked, his hands already coated in mozzarella. "I think we've got enough cheese to feed all of Italy." Marcus laughed, glancing over at Janelle, who was leaning in the doorway, watching the moment unfold. It was the first time in 5 years Marcus had been there, in the space Janelle had carefully crafted for her and Julian after the divorce. "Mom," Julian called, snapping her out of her thoughts, "can we eat in the living room while watching a movie? Please?" Janelle hesitated. Rules were important, and eating at the table was one of them. But something about this evening, about the simplicity and warmth of it, felt like it deserved an exception. "Just tonight," she agreed. Julian's face lit up. "But first, go wash those hands," she added with a laugh. As Julian ran off, a quiet calm settled between Janelle and Marcus. "Your apartment's beautiful," he said, looking around at the thoughtful touches. Framed photos of Julian, his crayon art hung with care, healthy green plants by the windows. "It's small," Janelle shrugged, "but it's ours." "It's perfect," Marcus said gently, "like everything you do." Before she could respond, Julian came running back with clean hands and a DVD. "Can we watch up?" he asked, waving the case. "My teacher said it's about never giving up on your dreams." The three of them curled up on the couch, Julian between his parents, the warm pizza on the table, and the opening of the movie playing on the TV. The tender montage of Carl and Ellie's life filled the room with a quiet tension. "Dad," Julian whispered during a particularly emotional scene, "why did you give up on Mom?" The silence that followed was heavy. Janelle thought about stepping in, shielding her son from the truth. But Marcus shifted on the sofa, looked his son in the eyes, and answered with a sincerity Janelle had never known from him before. "Because I was foolish, son," he said quietly. "Sometimes people forget what's really important." "I used to think money and power mattered more than love and family," Marcus said. "It took me a long time to see I was wrong." Julian mulled that over. "But now you know what's important?" "Now I know," Marcus confirmed, his eyes meeting Janelle's for a brief, quiet moment. "And I promise never to forget." The movie continued, but Janelle barely noticed. Her thoughts lingered on Marcus's words, the simplicity and sincerity with which he had answered such a complex question. By the time the credits began to roll, Julian was already asleep, his head resting on Janelle's lap, his feet curled on Marcus's legs. "I'll put him to bed," Marcus offered quietly. Janelle nodded, watching as he gently gathered Julian into his arms, like he was holding the most precious thing in the world. A few minutes later, Marcus returned to find Janelle collecting dishes in the kitchen. "He asked for a story," Marcus said. "Would it be okay if I—" "Of course," she replied. "The dinosaur book's his current favorite." When Marcus came back, he found Janelle on the balcony staring out at the glowing Chicago skyline. "He's out cold," Marcus reported, joining her. "Right during the part about the Triceratops." Janelle smiled. "He always sleeps through that part." The quiet that followed was different, thick with things neither had said, with what might still be possible. "Janelle," Marcus started, his voice soft but steady. "I know I don't have the right to ask for anything, but—" "You can come more often," she interrupted, surprising them both. "For dinner, to help with homework, to be there. Julian needs it, and maybe—" She paused, weighing her next words carefully. "Maybe we do too." Marcus absorbed her words in silence, his gaze fixed on the city lights. "Thank you," he said at last, "for letting me be part of this family again, even if it's different now." "Different can be good," Janelle replied, thinking of what Dr. Martinez had said about lowering walls. When Marcus left that night, there was a new kind of lightness in the air. Maybe it was the lingering smell of pizza, or the soft rhythm of Julian's breathing from the other room, or maybe it was just the quiet sense that sometimes endings are also beginnings. Autumn was turning Lincoln Park into a sea of red and gold when Janelle received the phone call that changed everything. It was Charlotte, her friend and attorney, and her voice was practically buzzing. "Janelle, you need to see this. Your company's shares have tripled. That digital campaign you ran for the green tech startup, it's blowing up across the country." Janelle sat in her office, stunned, staring at the numbers flashing across her screen. Years of grit and growth were finally blooming into something big. "And that's not all," Charlotte added. "Remember those investors Marcus connected you with?" Charlotte said, her voice alive with excitement. "They want to expand the partnership. We're talking numbers that could put your firm among the biggest on the East Coast." Janelle felt her world tilt slightly. Success, the kind she used to only imagine during sleepless nights after the divorce, when Julian was sound asleep and she worked herself to exhaustion just to make ends meet. "I need to tell Julian," she said instinctively. "Actually," Charlotte hesitated, "I think you should tell Marcus first." "Why?" "Because part of that success, well, he helped make it happen. Not just introducing investors," Charlotte paused. "He's been turning down consulting contracts that might have competed with your company. I found that out today." Janelle sank into her chair, stunned. The Marcus she once knew would have never done that. The old Marcus would have seen her momentum as a chance to take the lead, or worse, take over. Later that afternoon, she met Marcus at the cozy cafe where he worked part-time as a freelance financial consultant. It was a quiet, no-frills spot, a world away from the glass towers he once occupied. Marcus looked surprised to see her. "Is Julian okay?" "He's fine," Janelle said with a warm smile, taking the seat across from him. "Actually, I came to talk about business." She told him everything, the investor interest, the company's growth, and how her decisions were finally paying off. Marcus listened silently, a gentle smile spreading across his face. "Why didn't you tell me you were turning down jobs?" she asked. "Because it didn't matter," he replied simply. "You've built something amazing, Janelle. I didn't want to stand in the way." "What if?" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "What if I wanted you in the way? Professionally, I mean." Marcus raised his eyebrows. "What are you saying?" "A partnership," she said. "Your strength in corporate finance and mine in digital strategy. We could scale something bigger, something that lets us spend more time with Julian too." Marcus's expression turned serious. "Are you sure? Working together, it could get complicated." "When has anything between us ever been simple?" she said with a small smile. Just then, Janelle's phone rang. It was Julian calling from school. "Mom?" His voice burst with excitement. "Guess what? I got picked to be the main narrator in the Christmas play." "That's amazing, sweetheart," Janelle replied, putting the call on speaker so Marcus could hear too. "Is Dad there?" Julian asked, noticing the extra voice. "I'm here, champ," Marcus replied. "So proud of you." "So can you and Mom come pick me up together today?" "Please?" Julian asked. Janelle and Marcus exchanged glances. There was so much to talk about, so many plans to figure out. But in that moment, the answer was easy. "Of course." "Yes," they said at the same time. Later, as they strolled through the park with Julian between them, excitedly chattering about his role in the Christmas play, Janelle realized something. The biggest victories weren't always measured in contracts or metrics, but in simple moments like this. "You know," Marcus said softly, watching Julian run ahead to toss breadcrumbs to the ducks, "I think I finally understand." "Understand what?" "Why I lost everything 5 years ago," he said, eyes still fixed on his son. "I was investing in the wrong things." Janelle felt something shift in her chest, something warm, something like release. A mix of forgiveness and understanding she hadn't realized she'd been holding on to. "And now?" she asked. "Now," Marcus smiled, watching Julian sprint back toward them. "I'm investing in what matters, and this time I promise not to squander the dividends." Julian caught up, beaming and holding out a gold leaf. "Look, it's the color of the sun." "It's beautiful, sweetheart," Janelle said, slipping it into her bag along with all the other small treasures Julian had collected over time. "Can we get hot chocolate?" he asked hopefully. "And Dad, can you tell us more stories about Italy?" Janelle looked at Marcus, who met her gaze with a mix of hope and deference. Yes, she said, surprised by how natural the answer felt. I think it's time we made some new stories. The end.